If I told you my story, you would hear hope that wouldn't let go. And if I told you my story, you would hear love that never gave up. And if I told you my story, you would hear life, but it wasn't mine. If I should speak, then let it be of the grace that is greater than all my sin, of when justice was served and where mercy wins, of the kindness of Jesus that draws me in. Oh, to tell you my story is to tell of Him.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. As you can see, either John has become much younger, or he couldn't actually be here. The latter is probably true. So I'm taking his place at the moment. But welcome. We are continuing our series for the Wednesday Bible study on our stories and things like that. And today I have Danielle.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it Danielle or Daniela?
Danielle.
Okay, it is
Yeah.
Danielle.
Yes.
Okay, because
Or
it's very.
Danny. It depends, whatever you feel like.
Oh, that sounds like a Game of Thrones reference. Let's not
no,
get into
I've
that.
never seen that.
Oh, you've
so
never seen
I
that?
haven't.
Oh, a good thing too. There's a lot of death.
Oh, lovely.
There's a lot of death and fire. So.
Okay.
But yeah, so today we are working on a particular question that she actually came up with, and that question would be.
Why does God put certain people in our paths?
Okay. All right. All right. So, you picked this one yourself and things like
Yes,
that, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, let's talk about that. Why? Why that one?
I think it's like a revolving door of people. People come in your life, they leave, or they stay, or people come in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like it's a constant thing. I think God intended it for it to be that way, because if you kept in contact with everybody that came into your life, it'd be crazy. It already is crazy.
It's a lot of people, yeah.
And I think sometimes it can be a good thing and a bad thing, and I think there's a reason for every part of it. So
Okay. Okay.
sometimes you don't know that reason either, which I think can be really interesting.
Yeah, that's indeed true. I mean, talking about what you are saying. I remember back in my elementary school, when I was a wee lad, I had friends, kindergarten or whatever.
Right.
But this was in Canada, things like that, and I don't interact with any of them anymore.
Yeah,
You
right.
know. And it's, I don't know, for me, I think it's definitely kind of sad sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah?
There's times where, I don't talk to anybody, I don't think, from elementary school anymore.
Yep.
And, I'll randomly think of a name. I'm like, oh, I wonder what this kid is doing now. Like, oh, we used to hang out all the time. We used to talk in school all the time. And it's like, I have no idea where they are.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's cool when they, come up on Facebook. Like, you have mutual friends
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah, and
then-
you're like, oh, I know that guy. I know
and then
that
you're
guy.
like,
Yeah.
do they remember me? Like, I don't know. So,
Yeah,
it's cool.
no, that's kind of true. It's funny because I remember that high school for me was, oh boy, like 7 to 8 years ago or something like that. So, and it's really weird for me that I was into drama and theater a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember actually being with these people like a lot.
Yeah,
A
lot of time.
I knew who they were. I knew who they were dating. I knew their last
gossip.
names exactly.
Yeah.
And now nothing.
Yep.
I'm like, wait, what was his last name? What was his first name? And then there's the people that you kind of look up to when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
you're seniors or things like that. And then they move away and blah blah blah. And then you kind of maybe sometimes see them, like you said, passing by in Facebook
Right.
or something like that. And then all of a sudden you see, oh, they're into this.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to send them a message. And they remember who you
Yeah, that's the
are.
best.
You're like,
Yeah.
I made an impact on this person.
Right.
How?
And you don't even remember, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So yeah. So I don't know.
I think life's so interesting that way.
You would probably have a whole series about that in and of
Yeah.
itself.
Oh my God. Yeah. You can go about this forever.
Yeah. So like, are you like? Because I don't really know your life story and all
Right,
that kind of stuff. Are you local? Like born and raised
I was
Fort
born
Myers?
and raised in Orlando.
Okay.
And it's funny because my dad graduated from UCF. It's about 45 minutes from where I grew up.
Oh,
so I
yeah,
just,
yeah.
my whole life, I was like, oh, I'm just going to go there, just stay local. I applied at a few different colleges, but I had a friend, one of my friends, actually, I went to school with her from kindergarten through 12th grade. She was coming to it was like an open house that FGC was having, and she invited me. I was like, okay, yeah, like I'll go. I'd never heard of this school. I'll see what it's at. And as soon as I stepped on campus, I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Wow.
Yeah, it just like felt like home. It felt like it's where I needed to be.
Dang.
And yeah,
Okay.
loved it ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So then, well, I'm guessing that. Okay. So did she go to the same college then?
She did not.
She did not.
No.
All right.
She ended up going to a community college by UF.
Okay.
So she went a totally different direction.
She's indeed like a few hours away from
Yeah.
here. Do you
Oh,
still
yeah.
contact? You know.
I'm actually not. I don't talk to her often, but we're
Okay.
friends on Facebook.
Okay,
and
that's
like,
at least something.
Yeah.
That's at least
Yeah.
something. But again, that's coming back to that whole point where it's like,
we were super close at one point.
Yeah.
And not that we're like if we hung out or talked, it'd be like just as old times, but we just don't keep in touch.
no, I get you. I
Yeah.
have the same thing. One of my one of the I need to say this very carefully. One of the groomsmen. I'm always I want to say bridesmen, but that doesn't make sense. One of my groomsmen actually lives in California now.
Okay, yeah.
If you are seeing this, hi Sufjan, how you doing? But yeah, so he always calls me, and I always feel bad about it because I
Yeah.
always like I want to call him, but I just never because for me, people are interesting. I
Yeah.
like to have a connection one-on-one.
Yeah, me too.
You know, and I have a relatively large family, and there's been some contention between like, you know, you should stay in contact with people because I have a family that's kind of spread over,
Right.
you know, some people in Europe and that sort of thing, and you know, they're definitely like, hey, you know, you should interact with them more. You should look on the group chat more. You should do that. And the amazing thing is that we can do that.
Oh yeah.
You
With
know,
technology today, you can.
you can
contact
yeah,
somebody instantly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Time zones are still a thing, but all right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that, like, you know, I'm not really that kind of person. Don't get me wrong. I'll swing by the group chat
Right,
now
yeah,
and again, be
right.
like, okay, how are you guys doing? But it's not where I'm like, I'm gonna post something every day. I know
Oh,
my
no, yeah.
mom does, and lovely woman that she is. But I'm not not that kind of person because I would rather spend in my opinion, the limited time that I have on the people that are around me.
No, that's
You
yeah,
know?
that's totally fair. Well, that's kind of how it is with Kevin. When he was in Maryland for the past year and a half, I felt really bad because I was really bad at keeping in contact with him while he was up there. But it's one of those things. I was surrounded by so many friends here, and not that he's like any less important than they are, but it was just different having that one-on-one, like being physically there with people and hanging out. And he was always the one to reach out to me, and I was
Yep.
like, okay, I need to make an effort.
Yeah,
I need
yeah,
to make
I
an
got it,
effort.
I
And
got
was
it,
so
I got it, I
hard,
got
and
it.
I never like really. And then he's back here, and now we hang out all the
Yep.
time. So
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be awesome though if God was also kind of the same way?
Oh, I would love to sit down and just.
Ugh.
I know. That's yeah. And everybody's like, I think John the other week asked like, if you could ask God one question, what would it be?
Yep.
And I said, I don't think I have one question.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like maybe.
Yeah.
Can I have like a question with like bullet points?
Yeah,
maybe?
can I have like a whole list, please? I was like, I cannot wait until we're in heaven. I can just sit down and be
Yep.
like, okay.
Yep. Yeah. It's interesting how God works because there's a few from a human perspective, there's a good thing and a bad thing where he is able to spend enough time with each and every one of us
Oh, yeah.
on an individual level, which you can't do as a person, right?
Oh yeah.
I know that, you know, especially if you have like, you know, especially like, for instance, with like, let's say you have a good professor or something like that, or a good friend or whatever, and during the summer, it's like, well, you know, it's a lot calmer, especially during the down season
Oh
here.
yeah.
You know, things are just chill and they're, you know, they're kind of calm. But then when, you know, all the snowbirds or the students or whatever come back, you know, you kind of have to spread yourself amongst
Yeah.
people.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And God doesn't have to do that, but I'm wondering if that's the case why he actually sent his spirit instead of actually having a physical person. Because if it was a physical person, he wouldn't be able to interact with
right.
everyone all the time, you
I like
know?
that, yeah.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I like that a lot because I think it's something as humans it's hard to grasp because he's outside of that for like our time, you know. So I think he is there all of the time, which I think is super. Because I think we all feel lonely, even if we're like surrounded by people. There's
Yeah.
times where I feel like super lonely.
Yeah.
And then
Especially in college. Let's be
oh
honest.
yeah, yeah. Like being away from family, like yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's so cool that at any instant we can just like stop. He's already there, but then we can talk to him, and like he'll say things back, whether we know it then or later.
That's true. That's true.
So-
I just wish he did it verbally,
Yeah,
you know,
oh, yeah.
and not via like because I am a person that that tends to I don't know. I tend to kind of second guess myself.
Oh yeah, overthink it.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
not even necessarily overthink it. I just don't trust, like, for instance, I don't trust my conscience.
Okay.
Because I've had some, you know, things in the past where I'm like, that's a great idea. And then I'm like, no,
No,
it's
it wasn't.
not. You know, and so I don't really trust it, but then I don't also trust other people in a sense.
yeah.
Like, I like to, well, I do believe that a lot of people are always wrong. It just depends on how wrong they are.
Right.
Some people are wrong not a lot of the time. Some people are wrong all the time.
Oh, yeah.
That's my own personal thing. I'm a very skeptical person. So then to hear like, oh, okay, God could be saying that. But I don't know because
Yeah,
it could also
right.
just be, you know, Joe Schmo that's just saying this. You know, for me, I'm like, it would just be great to have that kind of interaction, you know?
For me, as much as I would love for him to like be straight up and tell me things, I think it makes me appreciate what he is doing later on. Because I think it's so cool, like after you go through some kind of trial, to sit and look back and like God was here at this point, you made this happen, he did this. So in the moment, you're like stressing out and you're like, God, like what's going on? Can you like just give me a hint, give me a little bit of something so I can just, and I think that's where our trust and faith comes in a lot because we don't know what it is. He's the only one that knows. And I think it was Kevin last week was saying God laughs at any plans that we make.
Yeah.
That's what my mom has told me my whole life. So he knows exactly what's going to happen, and you know that you're okay because he's there, and he knows, and he loves you. So I think it's really cool to see how he makes those plans and how they play out.
I suppose. I mean, because that's also the whole thing about faith, isn't it? You know, I'm of the secure opinion that there's no way of actually proving that God actually exists scientifically anyway.
Right, yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of these things come back to like, well, why do you believe, or why this? And it all comes back to like, it's faith, you know.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to be like, if we were to ask him every single question and we could give every single answer, I wonder if it would be faith at that point, you know?
Well, that's where I've heard the debate come in. Like people are like, oh, like why do good things happen? Why do bad things happen?
Yep.
I think I was reading in a book. I wish I could tell you which one, but it's like if God made us and like forced us to love him, it'd be a different kind of relationship and a different kind of thing. You want somebody to love you because they choose to love you because they believe in you. You know.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting too.
Yeah. Which is, you know, going back to the whole people thing. I mean, that's also how you would build just a relationship, just
yeah.
you know, friendship or acquaintance or whatever, with, you know, the people that you have. I don't know. It's just interesting how circumstances can then just be like, okay, and now we decide not to do that anymore,
Yeah.
or we do just from far off, or something like
Right.
that. You know. I don't know. Just I found it always. I mean, this is again skeptical for me, but I found it always interesting how you have, you know, certain, you know, friends in high school or something like that that are like, oh yeah, we're BFFs, and I'm like, look, I would love to believe that. That would be great, but I think honestly that in a few years' time, you'll probably have different friends or different partners or whatever. You know.
It's funny you say that because one of the things I wanted to bring up, there was a girl that I went to elementary school with, and we were like super, super close. We ended up going to different middle schools, and I went to a different high school for 2 years. And then my junior year, I transferred, and she was at that same school, and we reconnected instantly. We were best friends. We did everything together: prom, homecoming,
really
football
cool.
games, everything, and
That's
it was
really
great.
cool.
And then we actually both came to FGCU. And looking back on it, it was a pretty toxic friendship, I think, on both
Okay.
ends, you know?
Okay.
We had a falling out, stopped talking, haven't talked to her since.
I'm sorry that happened.
Well, it's one of those things, like, I think God put her in my life again to experience all those great things with each other, you know? And then it was just for that timing, you know? But one thing that's really awesome is I was so scared to come to college because, like, I'm super close with my family. I have great friends back home. Well, I got random roommates my freshman year. They were both amazing. But Sam, she comes here. I think you met her Wednesday night.
Yeah.
She is my best friend, and I got so freaking lucky with her. And it's cool because she was also going through a similar thing too. Her and her best friend just had a big falling out, and like at the same time. And then God put us together, you know. And I think it really helped our bond. And yeah, she's one of my most favorite people in the whole world.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, so I
That's
think
really
it's
awesome.
so as sad as it was to like lose the one friend. She came in and she's just amazing.
Yeah,
So.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I think also like I think for some people might be listening to this who just maybe got out of a relationship, out of a friendship or whatever. Like, what did you feel? Because I'm sure that that overlap between you lost your best friend and you gained a new best friend in Sam, where that that clicked. I'm sure that there probably was a time period between there,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So what did you what were your thoughts on that? Like, how did you experience that? What was going on?
I felt, well, it was nice because the friend at the time was here at FGCU. So like I was still, like, I would pass her by on campus, you know, and like it was kind of hard to like see her and not like oh hey, you're like we would hang out all the time. I go to her dorm, she come to mine. So that was weird. And there wasn't much of an overlap only because I was living with Sam. So like I was with her all the time.
Okay, that's fair.
And I like to think of it, I don't think Sam like replaced the one friend.
I don't think she can.
Oh no,
honestly.
right.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that like I needed, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I think a lot of it's funny because my wife listens to a podcast.
Oh, I love podcasts.
So do I. The one I'm listening to right now is Critical Role. So anyone who does Dungeons and Dragons, hit me up. But
Chad would be into that.
oh really?
Yeah, he loves Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. I'm gonna have to actually hit him up then.
He was talking about wanting to play a game, and we haven't yet. So maybe this year we can.
Okay. Well, I have like a level 1 character and things like that, so
I don't even know what
I'm
that
all ready
means,
to go.
so.
Oh well, you have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Oh boy,
I'm
complicated
down.
game. But I'm getting off topic. But actually, anyway, actually listens to a podcast. I won't actually expose her to what it is and all that kind of stuff. But she listened to a podcast, and it was interesting. They had a episode about friendships and all that kind of stuff, and specifically about they kind of compared friendships to like relationships, like like intimate ones or
Right,
that
yeah.
sort of thing, and it was like at least from their perspective, it was like there's two outcomes. Either I'm going to be with this person forever, in a relationship, or I'm not, or it's going to not necessarily crash and burn, but it's going to,
Change.
it's going to change, and we won't be in a relationship after a certain amount of time. And their thoughts were also like they talked about some psychiatrists and psychologists and all that kind of stuff, and their their idea was also like what's the difference then between like friendships and relationships, because and again relationships and talking romantic ones, because we always kind of think like, hey, we're going to be in a friendship forever, or maybe
Right.
some people might think so, especially when they're young, but then when it doesn't, people they might feel guilty about things, and then I was like, oh, could I have done anything different or something like that. But I think also, we can both agree that that's not the case, like
Right.
at all. It's interesting how we go into a friendship, or at least from their perspective, that we go into a friendship expecting that it will always last, and then when it doesn't, you're getting of that expectation, like, well, it should have actually. So what's going on? What went wrong, or something
And I
like
think
that?
on the flip side of that too, it's cool to see friendships like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna get along with this
Yep.
person, or like I don't want to hang out with them, and
Yep.
then you end up wanting to spend so much time with them. Too,
Yep,
So
Ashley is also a really good example
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
There's someone in her life that she hated her guts, and say it was mutual.
Yeah,
And then they hung out with each other, and now they're basically sisters and things like that. And she just loves the heck out of
That's
her,
awesome.
and so yeah. So I don't know. I don't get me wrong. I appreciate people and things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. It's just interesting how messy they
Oh,
can
yeah.
be. How good, don't get me wrong, absolutely, but also just how, like, you get someone in your life and they stay with you and then they fork off and they're never in your life again. Or maybe after a few years they come
Right,
back in
yeah.
and then you're like, we were idiots.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Why would we ever,
I think I see a difference in that too with Christ-centered relationships or friendships versus non.
Okay.
Because I feel like, especially in the world today, we are always making our own opinions and have our own opinions, and they're different from everybody else's. And I feel like being in a Christ-centered friendship, you're able to have those conversations without
Okay.
judgment, and you're able to talk about them. And
We
then,
hope.
Yeah, and then but push them aside, and like we're friends, it doesn't matter. Versus I've seen some of my other friendships without that Christ-centered. And like I feel like those have more tension in them, and like
Okay.
even if it's not my intention to judge, like obviously in the back of my head I'm like, oh well,
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
So I think,
Okay, I get you.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
the two are very different, but I think there's a purpose for them. I don't know
Okay.
what it is.
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up. Just like at least we hope with two people that really have Christ and the idea of Christ in their hearts. Then you're like, I feel that a lot of people don't really want to talk about
Yeah.
like what we had this Sunday about who we are,
Right.
like how sinful we are and that sort of thing. And I don't know. I just find it interesting where we, the hope is that if we, do live in Christ, that there is this sense of like, yeah, we can talk about it. Like,
Right.
yeah, I suck. You
like
suck.
we're both sinners.
We all
yeah,
suck.
yeah, but we're both loved. And,
But yeah, and we can hopefully move on from that and be
Right.
like, yeah, I'm sorry that you're going through this. It might be your own fault, but
Yeah.
I'm sorry that
Yeah,
you're going through
right.
it anyway, because I know what that feels like or something like
yeah.
that. Where perhaps skeptical, but perhaps in a relationship where that's not the case, you have perhaps a little more the tendency to judge people, to be like, hey, how could you do this or something like that. And I'm overgeneralizing
Yeah.
and things like that. I understand that there are definitely many relationships that are not based on Christ and are still fantastic.
absolutely, yeah.
There's unfortunately a lot of good people that would be great as Christians because they already have that love
Right,
for other
yeah.
people. But we hope, I think, at least with a Christ-centered relationship, that there's at least some form of forgiveness and reality
Yeah.
in it too, and like an overwhelming amount of love, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I've been asked too, like, if it's so much better having a Christ-centered friendship versus not. I think it's important to have those ones that aren't. Like, I've heard of like missionary dating, like when you date somebody that's not a Christian, so you can try to make them a Christian.
No.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, yeah,
No,
oh, no, I agree.
no, I've
But I
done
feel
that.
like-
No.
In the friendship aspect, I think just like being around those people, you're planting seeds, whether like you realize it or not. I remember I had this one friend, he wasn't a believer or anything, and I would constantly try to have conversations with him about it. Nothing like serious, just kind of like picking
Right.
his brain about it. And he wanted nothing to do with it. But I kept hanging out with him, it was like fine. And then eventually he started kind of asking me questions. I was like, oh, so maybe like it's sticking with him a little bit,
And his name was Victor.
No, he's great too. I think it's cool because, all we can do are plant those seeds. And then it was either Hunter or John. They're like, yeah, and then Jesus waters them. It's like, you don't have to do anything beyond that. Which I think
Yeah.
is really cool.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that I know that I've been watching like The Chosen and things like that. Again,
I love it.
It's a great show.
Did you
There are a
finish
few
it?
things. I'm not end of season 2,
Okay,
so
okay.
and to be fair, I finished it in a while. There are a few like things where I'm like, okay, you took a little bit of liberty with that, but
Right,
still,
yeah.
love the show.
Yeah, me too.
Shameless plug-in, I guess. But it's interesting how. I was watching it yesterday, and I was, I felt like, dang, I need to, refocus my life more towards, Christ. And I think when people have that, or at least I know when I do, when, you want to do something big, you want to do something of like, oh, I want to, or I want to, share it with people or
Right.
whatever. And this is my own opinion, right? I'm gonna, there's a lot of, I have a biblical basis, I think, for it, but I think a lot of people also have a lot of biblical basis for other kind of views. So I'm just putting my own view out there. That it's very interesting that you gotta, in my opinion, when you are sharing that with people, that it's so very, how how would I say this? You got to be careful that you're
Subtle.
subtle, I guess.
Yeah.
I like to play it subtle.
Yeah, me too.
You know, where I'm like, okay, is it time? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I might be maybe a bit too careful on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, right.
But I also don't want to be that, that Bible thumper. It's like, well, have you read the, the
Yeah.
second book of
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Ephesians or something like that? It's like, well, I think that there's a good balance between those kind of things. But I also think that you shouldn't have a Christian relationship, or you shouldn't be a Christian who's looking for a friendship with a non-Christian just to
No,
actually,
absolutely, right.
so. Being friends with a person, regardless of
Oh,
their,
yeah.
Theology, is good in its own right. So that's my opinion.
Yeah.
So
That's one thing I love about Thrive, and like on Wednesday nights, it's like there's so many people that are different stages of their faith. Like maybe they don't believe, but they're curious. I just think it's so cool how they can come and like they feel comfortable here.
yeah. Well, last Wednesday we had like. My goodness, like there was like we were talking. I'm not going to point anyone out because that was a very some very personal things that were shared, but there were definitely some things that were like, whoa, okay, you were sharing that.
Yeah.
And it was nice too to actually be like, oh, so we're not all the cookie cutter same
yeah,
person.
right.
We all have different things. So it was. It's nice to kind of have that, and I hope we actually have that kind of
I think so. Yeah.
So.
Another and tying into my question, I remember moving in freshman year. For some reason, we were moving all my stuff in. I had to leave my mom for something. And I come back and she's talking to somebody. I was like, oh no, like what is she? Is she trying to like make friends for me? Like what's going on? So I go, and it was Brooke.
What, Hunter's Brooke?
Yeah, Brooke Kessler. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
I know. So I forgot how they started talking, but she was just asking like where I'm, like the normal typical questions,
Yeah.
and she wasn't pushing anything. She helped move our stuff. And then at the end, she was like, oh, like just so you know, we are part of this campus ministry. And because I was gonna look for one, but I didn't know
Yeah.
where to start. And I was actually just gonna go to Summit because that's the only one I'd heard of. And she was just so like, she seemed so genuine.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Brooke,
she's
my
great.
goodness, what the heck?
Yeah.
How did Hunter actually end up with her?
Right?
I'm
Yeah,
like,
no,
what?
I had
She's
that
too
too.
good for him.
So
We love you both.
So, and then Sam ended up. She's a Christian too, of course.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know. You
crazy.
would have never believed, right? So I was like, she gave me like the flyer for Wednesday nights, and me and Sarah were like, oh, like you want to go? Like we'll check it out. We were
Yeah.
going to check out everyone in the area, and we came. And we were like the quiet ones. We'd sit in the back by ourselves,
Yeah.
but everyone was so like welcoming, and they would all come up to us, just like have a conversation. And it was like it wasn't awkward or anything either, which was really awesome. And then we just like felt really we belonged here.
Yeah.
So I think it's just crazy how like now I have so many lifelong friends from Thrive that I know they're just great, and I think that's awesome that like by happenstance Brooke was talking to my mom,
Yeah.
and then now I'm here.
Yeah.
And I've,
Butterfly effect,
been here
So,
for 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. What we talked about? Any closing statements or
I don't
thoughts?
think so. No.
All right. Awesome. Shall we end this off in some
Yeah.
prayer then?
Yeah.
Awesome. Father, thank you so much for giving us the time to actually talk about the relationships that we have. I think we kind of got off on a few tangents here and there, but there's great blessing in the fact that you have given just multiple people in this world, and that sounds like a very like a no duh statement, but it's interesting where we are surrounded by people, and we're surrounded by a lot of people, and we can pick or choose our friends and things like that, which is also a great blessing that you have. And I think something we don't actually think about very often of that we have the choice, but there's also there's quite a lot of it's complicated, because I think there's a lot of things about how our relationships evolve, even being married or being lifelong friends or whatever. That it changes through the years and through time because we change, and it's I don't know. I think it's good to talk about because we want to be a people that is open to talking about the big things, as I think you were, and still are, obviously, to come together to actually talk about it in your presence, for your glory, to say, hey, you know what? Sometimes being in relationships is great, and sometimes breaking up with them is awful. And I'm sure all of us have issues and experience with that. And I just want to say, Please help us for everyone who needs the help. Please comfort us when we need comfort, and help us to enjoy each other. Not necessarily to, fulfill some goal, because I think we get it wrong a lot, but just to be friends for friends' sake, to show Christ's love through, just how we act. So thank you so much for this time. Please be with us as we go from here today, and let us be good examples of who you are through the relationships that we have. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we will see you next week. I think that John is probably going to take over from me, because otherwise it'd be very strange if I took over John's job. Who knows? Next time I'll be
Maybe,
preaching.
Yeah. Next one, yeah.
That'd be weird. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.